Lost Spaces. Sandy Island. 19 degrees 12 minutes 44 seconds south, 159 degrees 56 minutes 21 seconds east. The discovery of the non-existence of places is an intriguing byway in the history of exploration. The most recent example came in 2012, when an Australian survey vessel visited Sandy Island, 700 miles east of Queensland, and found that it was not there. This despite the fact that a stretched-out oval 15 miles long and about 3 miles wide had been on the map for almost as long as people had been charting these seas. Breakers and sandy islets were first sighted here by a whaling ship called the Velocity in 1876. A few years later, Sandy Island got a mention in an Australian naval directory. In 1908, its inclusion on a British Admiralty map of the area lent it even more legitimacy. But its dotted outline on this chart shows that it was being identified as a potential hazard and hinted that it needed further exploration. 4 years earlier, in 1904, the New York Times had covered the story of an American cruiser, the USS Tacoma, that had been sent to verify hundreds of illusions charted as land within the American Group, a chain of islands supposedly located midway between the United States and Hawaii. Their existence was given weight by the claim of Captain John de Greaves, science advisor to King Kamehameha of Hawaii, that he had picnicked on one of them in the company of the famous Spanish dancer and mistress of King Ludwig I, Lola Montez. Unfortunately, both the islands and the picnic turned out to have been wishful thinking on the part of the captain. The New York Times story explained why, aside from tall tales, the oceans were still littered with cartographic blunders. Long dark patches or bright yellowish patches, which at a distance give the mariner the impression of shoals, a riptide mistaken for breakers, and even the back of a floating whale have been enough to start a new myth. In lonely parts of the sea, where information is at a premium and corroboration or refutation rare, the thinnest evidence will live for a time on a chart with the embarrassing letters ED opposite the entry, meaning its existence is doubted. Because land is looked and hoped for by sailors, the faintest signs have been seized upon. Far from being doubted, Sandy Island's credentials became ever more watertight. Having been inked in on an authoritative chart, it acquired the status of a known fact, and its myth was transmitted deep into the 20th century and beyond. It was included in maps produced by the National Geographic Society and the Times of London, and no one complained or even noticed. It was also, apparently, captured by the satellites that many imagine are the sole feeders for Google Earth. Dr. Maria Seaton, who led the Australian survey team, explained to journalists that although the island is on Google Earth as well as other maps, navigation charts show the water to be 1,400 meters deep in the same spot. So we went to check and there was no island. We're really puzzled. It's quite bizarre. On November the 26th, 2012, Google Earth blacked out Sandy Island and later stitched over the spot with generic C. Today on Google Earth, the place where Sandy Island once was is crowded with dozens of photos uploaded by map browsers. Unable to resist the creative possibilities, they have scattered the ex-island with images of clashing dinosaurs, moody urban backstreets, and fantastical temples. The story of the disappearance of Sandy Island was a minor global sensation. If Sandy Island doesn't exist, then how can we be certain about other places? The sudden deletion of Sandy Island forces us to realize that our view of the world still occasionally relies on unverified reports from far away. The modern map purports to give us all easy access to an exhaustive and panoptic, God's eye view of the world. But it turns out that ventures such as Google Earth are not just using satellite photographs. They rely on a composite of sources, some of which are out-of-date maps. Even before 2012, some people already knew that Sandy Island didn't quite live up to its name. It lies in the terrestrial waters.